Stein knew his human companions were considered handsome among their own kind. He was beautiful in the eyes of his people. When he got to his couch, he flowed up onto it, then let himself settle down to a slightly raised mound of leather. He sealed the mantle. "Ready?" Conley asked. They would accelerate to approach the derelict, lock onto her and investigate from her stem to her stern. Malco grunted, and Stein said, "Let's go." Under his mantle was a two-way radio that had been modified so that it amplified his chest vibrations and translated them into sounds that were intelligible to the humans. Conley brought the small scout closer to the great ship, matching her speed until they were side by side. The slow tumble of the crippled ship caused her to wobble as she turned over. She had passed through a region of heavy dust and rocks. The damage done to her was extensive, with several holes in the forward section where the engine room and controls were located. Conley cursed harshly. Malco grunted, glanced at Stein, and said, "Lifeboat pods are empty. She's abandoned, all right." "They left her on manual," Conley said. "If she'd been on automatic, the computer would have dodged all that junk. She must be hotter than hell." He began the approach maneuver, guiding the scout toward the rear of the ship, away from the engine section and the radioactivity. Malco and Conley made a good team. Stein felt wave after wave of worry come from Malco, while Conley sent nothing during the difficult approach. It took skillful handling to bring the small boat to the right place, but he edged in, first a foot at a time, then inch by inch, until it seemed they could reach out and touch the other ship. Stein watched with admiration as the ship started to come nearer them, her tumbling motion completing the maneuver. Conley adjusted the control, lifting the scout slightly, and when the two met, the jar was so slight that it might have been imagined rather than felt. "That's that," Conley said, locking the scout in place magnetically. "Let's eat first, then board her and see what's what." While the two humans prepared and ate their rations, Stein turned to gaze out the port. Unlike this species, he most often preferred not to watch another partake of food or perform other bodily functions. He knew his mouth parts were disgusting to the humans. Under his mantle, his tentacles fed capsules into the pink mouth parts that moved rhythmically, and he stared with delight at the unwinding scene passing before his eyes. The tumble of the ship they now shared seemed gone. All motion had been imparted to the stars about them, but it was a curious motion. It was as if a black velvet cloth were being carried past him, making a slow twist and then settling very slowly downward. His people had known space for thousands of years. So long they no longer regarded it as a thing to be conquered. They were almost as much at home in space as they were on the surface of their worlds, of the depths in their oceans. Evolution, in fashioning their mantles, had adapted them to any environment, even, for short lengths of time, to a vacuum. Because they always adapted themselves rather than their surroundings, and because of their generosity and open goodwill, they were much loved by the various races of the galaxy. When the Flonderans had come to Chlason, they had been greeted with friendliness and amusement. So eager, so impulsive, so childlike. The name Earthmen was rarely used for them. They remained the Flonderans, the children. It amused Stein to think that, when they had still been huddling in caves, more animal than man, his people already had mapped the galaxy. When they had been floundering with sails on rough seas, engrossed in mapping their small world, his people already populated hundreds of planets, light years away from each other. When the Flonderans burst on the galactic scene, enthusiastic, vocal, boisterous even, they had been welcomed as children.